All right, y'all ready?
Sure.
So, starts the final chapter saying that all that's required to play good golf is to execute a few good fundamentals. And to him, it was like 8 fundamentals. It sounds like a lot, but to him, he's basically saying that's all there is to focus on. And grip is the first thing. It's like the foundation of the house. The swing starts with the grip, according to Hogan. And basically, what you're trying to do is set your hands to work as one unit, kind of like the hinge of a door. As you start to look at your grip, you can find ways to make it more efficient and make these things pivot together better. So let's just do a quick recap of exactly what he says about the left hand. To start out, we're resting the club between the muscular heel pad and the top joint of the forefinger here. So we got to think about this little section and this section down here. Sometimes I find it easy to visualize it with the shaft running through your hand like that, but we're hitting this quadrant with the bottom end of the grip and up here with the top end of the grip. And when we're wrapping our fingers around from there, the V should point to our right eye, according to Hogan. All this can be kind of personalized, but start with it at your right eye and see what that does for you.
Didn't he say that you're supposed to be able to?
You should be able to hold it, yes, with just that little trigger finger and the heel pad. That way you're mounted. And you want to feel the main pressure points are the last 3 fingers in the heel pad. He's talking about these fingers pulling up and the heel pad pushing down, which kind of wedges the club in between your hand. So let's take a look here.
So a little bit more canted.
So right in here, right through there. So it's going to rest there. Okay, and that V is looking good.
Yep.
Very good. All right. Then the left thumb is meant to fit snugly into the cup of the right palm. So how do we get that right hand on there? So he was an overlapper. I interlock. Do you guys have preference? Overlap. Okay. And we want to get it's very much a finger grip in the right hand. He goes into great detail that the right hand is very much a finger grip, and it lies across, quote, the top joint of the fingers, well below the palm. So that's this section here. Club is resting in that section well below the palm, he says. And the reason for that is that gives us all this room to hide the left thumb in the cup of the right hand. And when we're grasping fully there, he wanted his right hand, the bottom hand, to be pointed at his chin. Again, that can be kind of individualized, but let's start as he's instructing. The middle 2 fingers are applying most of the pressure, these 2 right here. And he really accentuates that with the 2-finger right hand grip drill, where he's getting folks to do the finger gun. Keep those fingers off of the club entirely, so when we're swinging, we can feel how that right hand is working without this pinching technique. He goes into detail that this.
These 2 fingers, not these 2.
Yeah, if he's saying if you pinch and we use this muscle that we use to pick up, we're using all these different outside muscles. You want to use the inside muscles. So basically we're immobilizing the thumb and the forefinger on the right hand. And he goes into strange detail about kind of, these are a Siamese twin here, and you don't want them to be separated. You want these together, and the right forefinger is almost pushing towards the target. So that's by far the most strange thing that I picked up rereading. It's strange. But just got these 2 fingers primarily holding it. You can hit balls with the thumb and the forefinger off. I did that for a couple weeks in the summer when I was trying to play, and it got my right hand setting a lot differently. And I was just using the proper part of the hand. So that's the drill that I would say stands out from the grip section is hitting some balls with the thumb and the forefinger off of the shaft.
So the right thumb, is it wrapping or down the shaft? Or?
Just it needs to be oriented, well, it needs to be pressed together with the right forefinger.
So like,
If you look at an illustration of the grip, hopefully I got it. There we go. Look at how he's got them
oh yes.
pressed together. All this space up in here, it's like they're welded. And to me that, it feels very odd. But if you're already a pretty good ball striker, changing the grip could be a pretty big change. But maybe just take 1 or 2 aspirin, not the whole bottle. Stance-wise, he wants the right foot square to the target line and the left foot kicked out. He calls it a quarter turn, so about 22 degrees. And he's using a 5-iron as sort of the benchmark for shoulder width stance. As you get a longer club, he wants you to step that right foot back. Reason he wants you to focus on changing the right foot is because later on he talks about, again, surprising, he played all of his ball position just inside the left heel. So as he's going from a shoulder width 5-iron to a driver, he's dropping that right foot back so the ball stays in position relative to the left heel. And then as we get inside a 5-iron, as he's hitting a 9-iron, the adjustment he makes, because we're shortening the arc as we bring the right foot in, that gives our hip less time to get out of the way. He makes an adjustment where he moves his right foot a little closer to the ball, which in effect opens his hips slightly. I thought that was strange as well. I was playing around with that, but it makes sense that you want to preset your hip to be a little bit out of the way if you don't have as much time to clear it with a shorter arc. In terms of symmetry of the elbows, you want that's set up here as we're relaxed. We want our left elbow pointed at our left hip, right elbow at our right hip. These cups of the arms are facing the sky. Make special note that the knees are pointed a little inward. That was meant to help restrict the hip turn. If we're getting them outward, he was thinking that you could get a little too wild in the hips. So maybe just point the knees in just a degree. Keep that left foot kicked out.
So to get the elbows pointed at the hips, it feels like you really have to open up and doing this, right?
Yeah, I think you're probably going to end up exposing more of your forearms than might be comfortable than usual, but that looks about right. That's good. He goes in to say that the proper stance, as he's outlining it, is really what it's doing is it's governing the hip turn. Because if we're getting too much hip turn, it doesn't, you don't get the stretch between upper and lower body that you want. It's kind of coiling motion. He would much rather you have a restricted hip turn and a big shoulder turn than a huge hip turn and a small shoulder turn. So we're wanting to get this right foot square that kind of braces us against this leg. He had a beautiful drill in there where he's got this club on your right leg, and I think it's a good variable to keep in mind. He's wanting this right leg to stay more or less in its same angle on the backswing. So if you can put an alignment stick or something on this right leg, it's going to straighten a touch. Left knee's going to bend a little bit on the backswing, but you want your right leg to basically stay where it's at. Your right hip is going to go back. That's called getting it deep. But you don't want to change the angle of your right leg. So he had this drill in the book where he's got a club like this, hitting balls, coiling without losing that club on his right hip. We talked about ball position, same relative to the left heel, despite the widening stance. We did that by moving the right foot back, keeping the left foot where it was. And the reason that we've got the ball where it is theoretically as we're shifting our weight, turning our hips back to the left, our low point is where you want the ball position to be, and the low point is further in front of the ball than a lot of people think. So ball position further forward than usual for most people is going to be helpful. All right, he calls the backswing the first part of the swing, and it's all about the plane. So when we want to visualize the plane, we want to think about a piece of glass our head is sticking out of, and that plane extends from the golf ball up through our shoulders. Starting out, the club is not on the plane because our arms are hanging down, but about hip high, we end up getting into a position that's parallel, and you're going to want to think about turning your shoulders on the same plane as well. Some people have an easier time visualizing it than others, but Hogan said this was one of the most pivotal moments in his game, is when he started seeing these angles and thinking about the club traveling on this plane of glass. We start out under it, we get parallel with it, and then at the top of the swing, the left arm should be parallel with it as well. It should be an extension of the plane if you complete your turn. I find that to be a super helpful visual. If I can get here, then I know I've made a full turn. My left arm is on plane. My right elbow is bent. I like to think of it as I'm holding a pizza tray up here at the top. I feel like I've really turned, and I can hold a pizza tray at the top and I'll be right on plane. He's really a big fan of the Waggle. He spends almost a page and a half on the Waggle, mentioning it as a pre-swing. Goes into detail that Waggle's different than the swing because it's sort of a lead up to the swing, and he really didn't want people turning their shoulders. He just wanted to focus on the feeling of swinging the club back and forth and the feeling of the release. And this is going to be individualized to every shot that you're trying to make. It's basically like a pre-shot. And he said that there were certain times when he felt like his Waggle was so committed and crafted that he felt like he had already hit the shot before he even pulled the trigger. So I find that a lot of times my Waggles are just sort of wasted effort, that it's just sort of like a nervous thing and I feel like I have to do it. But maybe reframe that to where you're trying to feel what the ground is feeling like, trying to feel what hand path you want to have for a certain shot that you want to hit. Take a little extra time to focus on the Waggle because it's the start of the swing. It's going to blend into your full swing. It shouldn't be different than what you would do to begin your backswing. It's sort of like pulling the lawnmower rope to get the engine going. And kind of a little detail that he gives us is that he feels like his right elbow is hitting the top part of his right hip on these little Waggles. So to me that means, you know, we're keeping our right arm connected with our right side body. It's not flying up out here. He really was feeling his right elbow, no shoulder turn, right elbow rubbing on the top part of his right hip. Okay, and then the order of the backswing goes hands, arms, shoulders, hips. So the Waggle, we don't have any shoulder turn. I think that's part of the reason he goes into so much detail on the order of the backswing. Because if we start getting shoulders in with the Waggle, it kind of gets our sequence out of play. So hands, arms, shoulders, and then the turning of the shoulders is actually what moves the hips. It sort of carries it with us. So I find that to be super helpful to think about this chain reaction of hands, arms, shoulders, hips. And then it's just the complete opposite on the way back down. And the proper sequencing is going to create this stretching tension that he's talked about throughout the first couple chapters, where we want to have this active tension in the body, this stretch between the lower body and the upper body completing its turn. All right, and then on the downswing plane is not the same as the backswing plane. To me, probably his best tip to mankind was getting to the top of the swing and getting people to realize if you just turn your hips, that delivers your arms into a perfect hitting position about hip high. And that's kind of abnormal for people to feel, but you want to feel the left hip really cranking out of the way. You want to feel like you keep the butt end of the club at the ball and your right elbow close to your side, and just think about getting the club down by turning your hips. There's no change in the relationship of my right elbow to my body, really. I'm just turning my hips. I'm shifting forward. There's a forward shift. A lot of people have kind of forgotten that now as we start to teach the pivot a little differently, but there's a definite movement this way, back towards the ball. I think of it as, all right, I've got my weight on this side of the teeter-totter, and then I rapidly have to get my weight back onto that side of the teeter-totter. So here, hands high, left hip cranks, getting us into the hitting position. Okay, and then once we get back to about hip high, we're going to be able to throw that right arm, because we'll notice our right arm is staying bent in through here. If we played any racquetball and you're trying to hit a kill shot, same thing. A lot of other sports, skipping a stone, same thing. The right arm is bent, and then after impact, the right arm lengthens. And this chain reaction, to him, it wasn't timing. It was, the chain reaction was the timing. And if it's done properly, this sequence is going to add speed, it's going to multiply your speed, and it's going to be a lot more consistent, and you're going to have this natural timing because it's check, 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 check down the line. And to him, a proper impact position, assuming that perfect structure at the top of the swing, just is reliant on initiating the downswing by turning the hips to the left, hitting through to the finish in one cohesive movement, is the way he put it. So to me, that means if we can think of this as 0 miles an hour and then trying to get through as quick as we can, we're accelerating through the shot, starting from 0. One cohesive movement, like we're cracking a whip. And a supination of the left wrist before impact. That to me is the most difficult thing to feel, because I've hit so many balls and I do it a bit naturally, but we're trying to basically feel at impact, the back of the left wrist is looking square at your target. It's raised a little bit this way, and we're releasing to where we're palm down, palm up through the shot. Left palm down as we're coming down, and then it's rolling and releasing to the left palm up. I find an impact bag is a good way to work on this if you've got something like this, and you can just make little small slow swings where we're getting into this position where the hands are ahead, back of the left wrist is looking flush at the target, but my wrist is kind of moving that way. And palm down, palm up through the shot. Okay. And then just zooming out a bit, his tip at the end of the book was to take good notes on what you're working on, what worked that day, what drills didn't work, what drills did work, cause and effect of shots. Take the time if you're going to come out and hit balls to take good notes. And again, he's talking about it being just 8 core fundamentals to a good swing. Start with the grip. Go to the stance. One other stance drill that he gave us was, imagine, back in the day, I guess everybody had these in tournaments and you'd go watch. You don't see them very much. I dug it out of our cool vintage bag room over there, but just a small sitting motion to start your stance. You don't want to be too far sitting down, but just an upper body that stays fairly erect and a slight bend into a hitting position right there. He wanted you to feel active tension in the lower body, is the way he called it. You want to feel like you're getting ready to me it's like you're standing as a quarterback right before, when you're yelling out the call, right before you go down to get the snap, you're kind of up over here, overlooking the O-line is sort of your posture. All right, that's about it for the recap. Let's get to hitting some balls, and I'll just work through some of these drills with y'all. So start with his little half swings with the right thumb and forefinger off of the club entirely. Just keep them stiff like this, like pew pew finger gun. Keep that L so you have most of the pressure in these two fingers, and just swing about here, here. Small swings to start.